Hey everyone, this is Conor with Down the Block Sports, bringing an exclusive new show called the Who Dat Chat. Joining me today, of course, Michael Balko. Mike, how's it going, man?
It's going good, baby. Let's run this thing up.
Absolutely. I am excited as well. We're just really ready to go. Today, 53-man roster. I know it's a little early, but we're going to go ahead and look at the New Orleans Saints and pick out who we think is going to be on the final roster come the first week of the season. Mike, let's go ahead and start with offense. Quarterbacks, I think, is pretty straightforward. There is a little bit of who's going to start, but I think we could probably lock in who's going to make the roster.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that the three guys that are making the roster are Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, and Ian Book. I was told recently by somebody who will be named anonymously that Taysom Hill is going to be the starter pretty much regardless of what the preseason does or says or whatever. No matter how well anybody plays in the preseason, I'm hearing the week one starters, Taysom Hill. So that's kind of what I'm banking on. Trust me, I would much rather it be Jameis Winston, contrary to what everybody on Twitter thinks right now. I would much rather it be Jameis Winston than Taysom Hill, trust me. But I'm hearing Taysom Hill, so that's who I'm going with. And then I think Jameis Winston checks in at number 2 on the depth chart. And then Ian Book, who actually I think was a very underrated star. And the game against Baltimore, the first preseason game, a lot of people thought he looked rough. I thought he looked very poised considering it was his first NFL game. I thought he made some good decisions. I thought he made some bad decisions. But I think overall, he probably had arguably the best arm talent out of everybody I saw. I think he pushed the ball down the field really well. I think he made some pretty good decisions considering he's not really getting first-team reps at all in practice or anything like that. So I think he did pretty well. So those are the three guys. I don't think there's really any debate about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at it right now. Same three. I do like Ian Book. I think he's got a lot of potential. Taysom Hill, for me, I think it's an interesting sort of conundrum that Coach Payton finds himself in with Taysom Hill, who can pretty much play a number of positions, and Jameis Winston, who likes to get the ball down the field, but is, prone to turnovers. So definitely an interesting sort of, situation there in New Orleans at the quarterback position. But, for running backs, I think we all know who number 1 on the depth chart is. It's just kind of filling out 2 and 3. Who do you got?
So my number 1 running back, I have 4 running backs making the roster. The bottom 2 might surprise a couple people, but after the first preseason game, it may not. I don't know. Running back 1, obviously, Alvin Kamara. Running back 2, Latavius Murray. Even though he fumbled in the preseason game, I don't think that's going to alter his status as far as where he ranks on the Saints. They're kind of the boom and zoom of the Saints, if you will. Number 3 running back, I have Tony Jones Jr. I think he gets the less playing time out of all 4 running backs I have, but he did put on a show against Baltimore, and he put on a show last season when we needed a running back to step up when all of our running backs got hit with COVID. And then the 4th running back I have making the roster is Dwayne Washington. I have him making the roster over Devonta Freeman, which is a very unpopular prediction, I would say, but I have him making it because he plays special teams. He's blocked a couple punts for us in the past. He had a couple kick returns in that preseason game. So I think he offers a lot to the Saints in that special teams area. And he's shown flashes in the past of being able to run the rock as well.
Yeah, I definitely have Kamara, solidified there at number 1. Latavius Murray, I think they've formed a pretty good 1 and 2 sort of dynamic there in New Orleans. I went with 3 running backs. I got Devonta Freeman on there. I think that, it's going to primarily be a 2 running back show, and they'll just kind of rotate in guys if it's really necessary. But when you have some of the versatility, Ty Montgomery, I know he's listed as wide receiver, but there is a lot of sort of versatility within the offensive scheme there.
And we also can't forget the fullback, Alex Arma. I think he's definitely going to be the fullback. So I don't know if you want to consider him a running back or a fullback, give him his own position. I don't know, but you can't forget about him in this 53-man roster. But I really, as a Saints fan and a Florida State fan, I would obviously really love for Devonta Freeman to make the roster, and it would just be great to see him just pop off against the Falcons. And I think we play the Giants this year too, if I'm not mistaken. So it'd be great to see him play against both of those guys. I'm not sure if the roster off the top. I haven't really had a chance to analyze anything, but I think we play the Giants this year. I think we play the NFC East. So it'd be great to see him pop off against both of his former teams and reunite with Jameis Winston and PJ Williams and just have a nice little family reunion out there in New Orleans in the Bayou. So So I'm obviously pulling for Devonta Freeman, and he did get quite a few touches in that game. He didn't really make much of those touches. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where he ranks in like the second, third, fourth preseason game. Do we only have 3 or do we have 4 preseason games? I don't even know.
3 this year.
We have 3.
I don't know about the NFC East. I know we play the AFC East for sure. That's what I know.
Gotcha.
And I know they play the Titans. I think they might play the Giants though. It's a tough schedule. There are some sneaky teams on there that could pose a problem. But Alex Arma, I got him on the 53-man roster as well. And we can move on to our wide receivers. I previewed Ty Montgomery obviously, but who do you got making the lineup here?
Yeah, man, that's the biggest question mark, too, about the New Orleans Saints is our receivers. Michael Thomas technically still has to be part of the 53-man roster. Obviously, we all know he's going to start the season on the IL more than likely, but at the moment, he's still technically active, so he does count against the 53. So I got Michael Thomas. Marquez Callaway really developed and emerged into that number 1 receiver against Baltimore. So I think he has all the talent to do that. As long as he stays healthy, man, he's worth a late fantasy flyer, in my opinion. He could be a guy who wins you leagues. A little fantasy knowledge here on the Who Dat Chat, baby. Number 2, I got Quan Smith. I guess that's my 3rd receiver so far. So Quan Smith. Then I have Chris Hogan. He's a bubble guy. I'm not sure if he's really going to make the roster or not, but I think he might just because we do need some experience at the position. I think Ty Montgomery also makes the roster. Just because he can play running back, receiver, he can return the ball, he can play special teams, he's down for whatever. We brought him back for a reason. He was slated to be a free agent. We brought him back. I think he makes the roster. Deontay Harris is uncertain whether he's going to start the season with a suspension. Hopefully not, because we really need him. But I think whether or not Deontay Harris starts the season with a suspension will determine whether or not like Tommy Lee Lewis makes the roster or not. So Tommy Lee Lewis is kind of my swing guy. I don't have him on my 53-man roster because I'm going to be optimistic and say Deontay Harris might avoid a suspension. I think he owned up to his mistakes on Twitter the other day, and I think the NFL might just slide that one past. Even if it is a suspension, it's probably only going to be for 1 or 2 games, so we'll see. And then my last receiver, I have Lil Jordan Humphrey. He clearly got a lot of the snaps in the Baltimore game. He ran a lot with like Taysom and Jameis. And he's currently a wide receiver, I think 3 or 4 on the depth chart. So I think he's going to make the roster. I'm not a big fan of Lil Jordan Humphrey, but he does have some experience and a very unexperienced receiving unit. So I think that's probably our group. But like I said, if Deontay Harris ends up getting suspended, Michael Thomas starts off the season on the IL, guys like Tommy Lee Lewis could certainly make the roster. Aesop Winston's a guy I like a lot. Jalen McCleskey is another guy I really like. They're really good, like kind of Deontay Harris type receiver. They just have a lot of speed. Obviously, we all know about Tommy Lee Lewis. I don't know how he keeps ending up on our roster, but that's probably
been there a while.
He has been there a while, up and down. So we'll see.
Yeah, with the receivers, I'm pretty much the same. I feel like a lot of it comes down to, as you said, injury, suspension, a lot of question marks there. I don't have Lil Jordan Humphrey making it, but Tommy Lee Lewis, Deontay Harris, Chris Hogan. There's a lot of guys that do have experience, a lot of guys that don't, and it's definitely, there's so many question marks going into that first week, especially with Michael Thomas. That injury should have been taken care of, but it's all in the past. We can't really do anything with that now. Let's move on to tight ends, man. I think we're cruising along here. I got Adam Troutman as that number 1. I'm assuming you do as well.
Yeah, obviously. I think it's pretty obvious that Adam Troutman's going to be the number 1. At number 2, I have Nick Vannett. And then number 3, I have Juwan Johnson, converted wide receiver to tight end. I think he looked really good in the preseason game. And I think he can climb up to that number 2 before it's all said and done. I think he offers a lot more to the table than Nick Vannett does. Vannett's just more or less just kind of a glorified, fullback, if you will, just kind of that guy who just blocks. Troutman has that nice combination of both that he kind of showcased a little bit in his rookie season last year. But Juwan Johnson, he's like a pure like Benjamin Watson type. I see a lot of like Benjamin Watson in him. I see a lot of like the good side of Jared Cook in him. So, I think Juwan Johnson has the potential, actually, if he puts in a lot of work, which I'm hearing he has a lot of potential to be, a very shocking surprise tight end addition for the Saints this year. And I think if he can climb up to number 2 and see some playing time, I think him and Troutman could form an electric tight end duo that no one's ever talked about or heard about before.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I got the same three. I'm really liking Juwan Johnson from what I've seen. Seeing some clips from training, and it's getting the blocking down. That's going to be the big thing, especially moving from receiver to tight end. But Troutman, I really like him. 60% of his catches go for a first down. So, the guys that can move the ball, get the ball up the field is exactly what the Saints need, especially losing Drew Brees.
Yeah, exactly. And you just kind of touched on it. Like this, it's kind of interesting to see the way Sean Payton's treating this offseason. Like we've seen multiple guys change positions, and it's kind of funny to watch because like we used to see that with guys like Taysom Hill and things like that. And now that there's not stability at the quarterback position necessarily, you're starting to see, other guys kind of mix and match and things like that. Like Juwan Johnson's going from receiver to tight end to try to make the roster. We're adding versatile guys like Dwayne Washington, like Alex Arma, who used to play defense whenever he was a rookie in the NFL. Like just a bunch of versatility in our lineup, and that's going to kind of be the difference on how many games we win or lose this year. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this preseason plays out, who's getting the first team reps, who's starting where, who's getting the most playing time. It's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think those three guys make the tight end position if they end up keeping three. If they don't keep three, then I think Troutman and Vanette have the best shot, and Juwan Johnson maybe moves back to receiver. It's just hard to tell right now. There's so much uncertainty in both the receiver and the bottom tier of the tight end position.
Absolutely. There's just a lot of, guys that do have versatility. I think that this is the coach you want to have players with versatility for sure. Let's move on to our line. Let's start on the left side here. Teron Armstead is a guy I got locked in at that left tackle position. Is it just him, or do you have another left tackle as well?
I just classified them as offensive tackles. I get so mixed and matched on who plays where. So I just said offensive tackles. I have three. I have Ramczyk, Teron Armstead, and Ethan Greenidge. For guards, I just put James Hurst, Andrews Pete, and J.R. Sweezy, not in that order. And then for centers, I put Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy. Obviously, we know Ruiz also flexes out as a guard. And I think Will Clapp's kind of a bubble guy. It just kind of depends on how well he plays this offseason, where his value kind of ranks with the Saints when it's all said and done at the end of the season, offseason.
Yeah, I think I have pretty much every single lineman as well. I have, Ruiz playing as that right guard. They do have a couple interior guys that can play center guard, so that is a huge, sort of bonus. A lot of versatility on this team, pretty much everywhere across the offense. But yeah, I really like that offense. I think there is room for improvement, obviously, but we'll have to see how the season unfolds. Let's move on to defense. Did you do it as like tackles, ends, or how did you do the line?
I did. I classified it by D ends, D tackles, LB, corner, safety, and then special teams.
Well, let's go over that line. I know Davenport and Jordan are kind of the two solidified ends there. Saints obviously drafted Peyton Turner. I would assume he'd make the lineup as well. Anyone else you got there on the D ends?
Yeah, I have Cam Jordan and Davenport as the two starters. I have Peyton Turner being kind of a rotational guy. I also have Carl Granderson in there and Tano Capassignon, dude from the Chiefs. I can't really say his name, but I know he's a beast on special teams. He's going to be a nice rotational defensive end piece as well. I know he can block kicks really well. I know he's currently injured, so we'll have to kind of see how his injury plays out. If he gets waived, I don't think it's because of his play style. I think it's going to be because of his injury. I mean, we just saw that with our kicker today, Brett Maher. So he got released. So currently have a question mark there, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I think Tano has a good shot at making the roster. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But if he gets waived, then I think that could open up the potential of another defensive tackle. So we'll just kind of have to see how that whole situation plays out.
Yeah, I got the same guys, except for Granderson, I think is the only one I don't have on there. But yeah, I'm excited to see how Peyton Turner, plays out, considering they did take him in the first round. So I would hope that we're going to be surprised with this pick. Let's move to the interior of the line there. I got Malcolm Roach and David Onyemata. Probably not saying that right, but who else do you got at that D tackle position?
So I also have Malcolm Roach, David Onyemata. He's going to be suspended the first 6 weeks of the season, so he's not going to technically be on our 53 to start it off, but I did still put him on the roster. So with that being said, Malcolm Roach is probably the clear-cut starter, as well as like Jalen Dalton. I have him on the roster. Christian Ringo, I think, is going to beat out a couple guys in there. And then I think Shai Tuttle makes the roster by the skin of his teeth until Onyemata comes back. I think we're going to see a lot more of like 3 or 4 defensive end sets kind of on that defensive line, at least until Onyemata comes back. I think we're going to see a lot of Cam Jordan and Davenport anchoring the edge, and then maybe a lot of like Peyton Turner playing in the middle, or maybe even vice versa, Davenport playing in the middle like he did a little bit last year, and then seeing Peyton Turner on the edge. I think we're going to see like a lot of like 3 defensive ends and 1 defensive tackle set for quite a while until we can get Onyemata back on the squad and starting on our defensive line again. But yeah, I mean, losing Onyemata the first 6 weeks is going to hurt, but like I said, that versatility is going to pay off for us, and I think that's the main reason why we did take a defensive end in the first round of the draft, is because we do have Marcus Davenport, who's proven he can play on the interior of that defensive line as well as the exterior, and he's having a great season, or a great camp doing both this year. So Carl Granderson, I think, is going to be a good piece on that edge as well to kind of rotate in, get guys some breathers. But yeah, as far as the D tackles are looking week 1, I think we go with 4, a little bit deeper than they usually might do. I know it's not as talented of a group as we had in years past, but I think the D ends are going to bail them out a little bit, and so will the linebackers that we'll touch on next.
Yeah, linebackers, there are some exciting names in here. Another guy I believe drafted this year, Pete Werner, he was drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round?
I think it was 3rd.
3rd, yeah. Obviously, bringing back Quan Alexander is a huge, improvement as well. Demario Davis kind of holding down that middle, the linebacker core there. But who else do you have in our linebackers here?
Yeah, so definitely Demario Davis, Quan Alexander, who was recently brought back. I'm happy about that. Caden Ellis was kind of the star of that first preseason game at the linebacker unit. We haven't gotten to see much of him in a Saints uniform yet, at least in the regular season, due to his injuries in his first few seasons. But I think he's going to be a huge piece as we look into this season if he stays healthy. So I think the Saints probably should limit how much he plays in the preseason, because he's going to be an impact player on our defense as a whole. Pete Werner obviously is going to be in the mix there. He's a 3rd-round pick. You don't just cut 3rd-round picks every day. And he's not a guy that's going to be sent to the practice squad because someone will pick him up easily. He's kind of like a hybrid player. I like his potential. I don't think he gets too much playing time to start the year, but we'll kind of see. And then Zach Bond is the last linebacker I have making the roster. He's had a huge offseason. He was training with J.J. Watt and T.J. Watt all offseason. He's starting to look like a really good like outside edge rusher. He could very well have a T.J. Watt type season this year, and kind of be that outside linebacker we were kind of hoping for last year, and be one of the best edge rushers / outside linebackers in the league. If we, especially like in the sophomore class, I think he has a really good shot at really thriving.
Yeah, and I would love to see him have a TJ Watt type season. I know the defense could definitely use that after last season. Let's move on to our corners here. I know you're pretty big on a few of them, namely Paulson Adebo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Adebo? Yeah. He's another guy they drafted. What are your thoughts on the corners? I know we got a little bit of, it's kind of all over the place, really, with Lattimore being really the only guy that you would say is a premier type player.
Yeah, it's definitely a kind of a crafty unit, so to say. It's kind of just a lot of new faces in there. Marshawn Lattimore obviously is going to be the anchor of it. He's another guy who could potentially be facing a suspension due to his arrest earlier this offseason. I'm being optimistic. Nothing's happened yet, so I don't think anything will happen by week 1. So let's just hope for the best there. Fingers crossed, because we can't lose Lattimore too. So I got Lattimore at the 1. Paulson Adebo is going to be opposite of him, I think. The big battle at corners between him and Ken Crowley. Crowley might get the edge because he's a veteran. He's had a really strong camp. But I like what I saw from Adebo in the first preseason game. He's been looking pretty good in camp. So we'll kind of see what happens there. Ken Crowley's my number 3 guy. He's had a great camp. I think he's going to continue that into the regular season. He played well for us down the stretch last season as well. He's made some plays for us in the past. He's really polished himself up and has molded himself into a pretty good rotational corner. Obviously, it's kind of concerning when you see Ken Crowley in the top 3 of your cornerbacks, but I think he's out to prove a lot of people wrong this year and could be playing pretty well. I have PJ Williams at my number 4 spot. He's also on the safety, kind of as like a free safety. I think his best bet to make the rosters at corner, though. He's proven he can play both, another Florida State guy. So I think he's like that hybrid corner, free safety type of guy. So I think he makes the roster. He's been with us for years, so I think he sticks around. Another one. Brian Poole, a guy that we signed in the offseason. I think he has a pretty good shot at making the roster. Obviously, he played with the Jets last season, had a pretty good season in just, I think it was 6 starts. I think he racked up like 30-something tackles, had a few picks. So he played pretty well in his 6 games. And then Kivari Russell's my last corner. He's a special teams ace. He's going to kind of fill that Justin Hardy role that we're going to be missing out on this year. Him and JT Gray, who's a safety that we'll talk about in a few minutes, are kind of going to be our special teams aces this year now that Justin Hardy's gone. So yeah, Kivari Russell, I think, makes the roster solely because of his special teams. But yeah, he's also kind of one of those bubble guys that I have on the roster. His biggest competition is probably like Grant Haley. We'll see how Grant Haley kind of pans out the rest of this offseason. I really like Grant Haley, so we'll kind of see. There's a few battles down in the lower tiers of our corner unit for sure. We obviously saw Prince Amukamara get released today. I kind of saw that one coming. He's a little bit old. It's kind of the same situation as Champ Bailey a few years ago. Same with like Brandon Browner. So there's several guys that were kind of older that we have, and it's just hard to tell, like Devonta Freeman, like those kind of guys, if they're going to stick around for too long or if they're just kind of camp bodies competing for a spot. But yeah, so we obviously saw him get released today, and so I think that opens up even more of an opportunity for Brian Poole and Kivari Russell.
Yeah, definitely a lot of competition there towards the bottom half of the corners. I actually had Prince on my 53, but now that I no, he's no longer going to be there, I guess I can cross that off. Let's move to our safeties, man. What are you most excited for to see on the safety?
I think our best position on defense, oddly enough, is our safety position. I think we're pretty deep. I have 4 safeties making the roster, potentially 5. It just depends with this last guy. But I for sure have 4. I have Malcolm Jenkins, obviously, CJ Gardner-Johnson, who's going to play that slot corner role for us, Marcus Williams. I mean, there's 3 starters right off the bat right there.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, Marcus Williams is going to anchor the free safety position. And then I have JT Gray, who's a special teams ace, proved it last year. I think he blocked a couple kicks. I know he made a lot of special teams plays on kickoff and punt returns. So that kind of thing. So I really like JT Gray. I mean, he was brought back for a reason and, paid pretty decently for his position as well. So I really like JT Gray. And then my 5th guy that I have on the bubble is Eric Burrell. He played really, really good in the preseason game against Baltimore. He's a thumper. He hits really hard. Reminds me a lot of like a prime DJ Swearinger, who was on our roster last season. So it'll be interesting to see how Eric Burrell kind of pans out the rest of this preseason. If he plays well and, he might be able to push out one of those corners and create himself an additional roster spot, because having a guy like that flying down on punt coverage could be lethal. So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
We'll just have to see how he translates to special teams and everything like that. But he looked really good in that first preseason game. So he's a guy I have on the bubble.
Yeah, Malcolm Jenkins, a guy that, veteran, he's been there before. I'm happy he's back. Definitely excited to see Williams, PJ and Marcus. I think that there's a lot of promise there. A lot of it comes down to, of course, injury, suspension. We don't know. So, I mean, hey, that covers the defense. Let's move on to our, punter, kicker, long snapper. Is that what we got?
Right now, we have a big question mark at kicker because we do not have one on the roster at all. Will Lutz is obviously injured, and then our other guy got waived today due to his injury that he suffered against Baltimore. So right now we don't have a kicker. I think punter is going to be Blake Gillikin. He's the whole reason that Thomas Morstead hung up the cleats to begin with. So he's definitely going to be the guy that makes the roster. He's been looking good so far. All of his punts are pretty much just getting a really good field position. A couple of them went inside the 20 against Baltimore. So pretty hype about that. And the long snapper is going to be Zach Wood, as always. That's not going to change at all. And that kind of wraps up our 53.
Absolutely, yeah. Blake Gillikin, Zach Wood. The kicker, obviously, big question mark. Will Lutz is out for a few weeks, right?
He's currently indefinitely, so probably going to be about 8 weeks, probably half the season.
Damn, yeah, they got to get that taken care of before the next game for sure. Well, that does it for us, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Who Dat Chat. That's our 53-man roster. Of course, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, Down the Block Sports, and slap that notification bell so you never miss another video from either the Who Dat Chat or the Alec Walt Show. I'm Conor Robinson, joined, of course, Michael Balko. Anything you want to say before we sign off, Mike?
Let's go Saints, baby.
Hell yeah. Let's go Saints. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you around next time.